Today I'll tell you 5 horrifying stories. Stories that sound way too real to be just fiction. If you ever see a green light above the woods, run. I've hesitated for weeks before posting this. Even now, I'm not sure if what I saw was real. But if someone recognizes what I'm about to describe, maybe I'm not crazy. This happened last autumn. I work as a delivery driver and often drive at night through the remote parts of the Podlaski region in Poland. It was around 2 a.m., the road completely empty, just occasional village lights and endless darkness of the forest on both sides. At first, everything seemed normal. The radio crackled, my headlights carved a narrow tunnel of asphalt through the dark. Then I noticed a strange glow ahead. Not a headlight, not a campfire, a green light, soft and steady, as if the treetops were being lit from inside. I slowed down. The forest there is dense, and the road led straight into that glow. The closer I got, the more the hair on my arms stood up, not only because of the color, but because the light was absolutely silent. No cars, no people, not even insects. The radio suddenly hissed, like every station was scrambled at once. About 100 meters closer, the light vanished, just gone. I exhaled with relief, and then saw something on the shoulder of the road, a figure, human-shaped, tall, thin. I first thought it was a forester. I stopped, rolled down my window, and called out, "Are you okay?" No response. The figure stood sideways, but its head was turned toward me. Even now I get chills remembering how it looked. Eyes. 2 faintly glowing green spots. No pupils, no whites. Just luminescence. I reached for the handbrake, but froze. The figure stepped into the forest and disappeared. No crunching twigs, no sound. I sat in my car trying to convince myself I was dreaming. I turned the radio back on, pure static. And then something above me began to hum. Low like a transformer, but louder. I looked out the window. Above the trees hung a massive triangular shape. No lights, no markings. Darker than the night, but I could see its outline because it blocked the stars. Panic washed over me. I floored the gas. The car lunged forward, but the road felt endless. In the rearview mirror, I saw the green glow again, right above my car. The next few minutes are a blur. I remember the steering wheel shaking, the air in the cabin feeling thick, almost unbreathable, a faint ringing in my ears and a metallic taste on my tongue. And then, nothing. I woke up at dawn. My car was parked neatly on the roadside, engine off, keys on the seat. My watch said 5:47 a.m. The strangest part, all calls on my phone from the last 24 hours were gone. Photos and notes were still there, but the past 12 hours were blank, as if someone had erased them. Since then, I never drive that road at night. Every time I hear about green lights or triangular craft, something inside me tightens. I'm not asking you to believe me. I wouldn't believe it myself if I hadn't seen it. But if you're ever driving at night and see a green glow above the trees, please don't stop. If I hadn't turned around, I might not be here now. I never thought I'd end up in one of those scary stories you read online. I live in a small city, walk to work, know every street, but that night completely shattered my sense of safety. It was around 11 p.m., autumn drizzle. I stayed late at the office and was walking home through an old warehouse district, usually quiet, just stray cats. My phone was dead, no music, only the sound of my footsteps. A few blocks in, I noticed a figure behind me. At first, I didn't think much of it. People walk at night, but his steps matched mine. I sped up. So did he. I turned down another street. He followed. My heart started pounding. I tried to convince myself it was a coincidence, but when I broke into a jog, I heard definite running behind me. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a tall, thin man in a hood staring straight at me. I cut through a courtyard to take a shortcut. There was an old brick building with an archway. As I passed under the arch, I heard a low hiss. "I know where you live." I almost stumbled. The voice was right there. I burst out onto the next street, no one around. The man was speeding up, closing the gap. I saw something long in his hand, glinting under the streetlight. Panic took over. I darted into a yard full of garages, hoping to lose him. I ran between rows, jumped over a low fence. There was a narrow path leading toward an apartment block. I sprinted without looking back. When I reached my building, I yanked at the door. Locked. My keys shook in my hands. I could hear fast footsteps behind me. And then, silence. I turned. No one. No archway, no garages. I burst into my apartment, locked every lock and sat on the floor until my breathing slowed. When I powered on my phone, I saw a missed call from an unknown number, a text message. "Nice running." I changed my route, stopped walking at night, installed cameras at my door. The police said they couldn't do much with such a vague description, but sometimes I still feel eyes on my back. Title: The Cursed Toy I Found in My Parents' Basement. I'm not sure why I'm writing this. Maybe to prove to myself I'm not crazy. But if even one person reads this and believes me, maybe it'll help. I'm 27 and live on my own now, but last weekend I went back to my parents' place to help them clear out their old house. They're finally selling it. The house sits on the edge of a small town in Podlaski, Poland. My childhood there was normal, except for the basement. It always felt too dark and damp, even in summer. When my dad and I started moving boxes, I noticed an old wooden toy. It was a clown, small, about 8 inches tall, with a faded red cap and a cracked wooden grin. I swear I'd never seen it before. Mum said maybe it belonged to my grandfather, but she wasn't sure. When I picked it up, my fingers clenched involuntarily. The wood was ice cold, even though the basement was warm. That was the first unsettling thing. The second was when I set the clown on the table. It rocked slightly, as if balancing itself. I wanted to throw it out right away, but my mum said, "Don't." It might be an antique. I shrugged and left it in my room overnight. Dumb, I know. That night I woke up to a strange tapping, like someone drumming a finger on the floor. At first, I thought mice, but the sound was too distinct, too rhythmic. Tap, tap, tap. I turned on the lamp and the toy wasn't on the table anymore. I almost laughed. Seriously? I'm acting like a kid got out of bed, checked under it. Nothing. Went to the kitchen for water, and there, on the table, sat the clown, facing the doorway like it had been placed deliberately. I figured I must have moved it in my sleep, picked it up, put it back in the box, fell asleep even more uneasy. Next morning, my dad said something weird. "Hey, were you in the basement last night?" I shook my head. He said he heard footsteps. When I went down again, the smell of damp earth was stronger. I noticed tiny footprints around the spot where the toy had been. Bare, child-sized prints. I tried photographing it. The photo came out blurred, like it was moving. Tried a video. The camera kept losing focus. That evening, things got worse. Mum called me for dinner. When I came back to my room, the door was ajar, the light flickering. The clown sat on the edge of my bed. Its smile had cracked wider. I raised my phone to film and heard a voice, childlike, very faint. "Don't throw me away." My insides turned to ice. I don't know why I didn't run. I just stood there. The toy tilted its head slowly. I grabbed it and bolted outside. The neighbors had an old well. I threw the clown down it, heard it hit bottom, Went back inside, heart hammering. I barely slept that night. Next morning I checked the basement. The toy was gone. I breathed out in relief, but as we were packing up to leave, I went to my room for my bag. And there it was. Sitting on the windowsill, wet, dirty, grin even wider. I screamed. My parents ran in, but they didn't see it. "What are you pointing at?" "There's nothing there," my mum said. I realized I couldn't stay. I left that day. Ever since, I've been dreaming of the clown sitting by my bed. Sometimes I wake up to that same tapping. I don't know if the toy is cursed or if I'm losing my mind, but if you ever find a wooden doll with a cracked smile, don't take it. I mean it. I saw what was meant to stay under the ice. I'm posting this under a throwaway. My real name doesn't matter. 3 years ago, I worked at a remote weather station on the Alaskan coast. That's what the paperwork said. In reality, it was a sealed facility carved into permafrost. Several underground levels, biometric security. We weren't studying weather, we were studying what we'd found under the ice. At first, it felt like ordinary science. Lab coats, reports, control groups. But our samples weren't bacteria or rocks, they were fragments. Scorched crystals that reshaped themselves, vials of viscous fluid reacting to thoughts, tissue of unknown origin pulsing without power. I was assigned Subject 14, a chunk of metal recovered from the melting shelf. It looked like debris from a satellite, but inside were translucent strands like nerves. Every time we approached it, instruments glitched. At first it was just odd, then terrifying. One day, sensors picked up pulses like a heartbeat. 2 beats per minute. I reported it. Supervisors told me to keep observing. A week later, the pulses sped up. A month later, it started responding. To light, to sound, to us. That night, it was just me and a grad student, Annetta. Subject 14 lay in its reinforced glass chamber. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out. The monitor glowed, 120 beats per minute. Annetta whispered, "It's waking up." The glass quivered, the metal inside rose like a tendril and pressed against it. In my head, my own voice, "Open." We ran for the door. It was locked. We were trapped. The subject was assembling itself, metal, strands, fluid merging into a transparent pulsing silhouette. Where eyes should be, white lights flared. I realized we weren't studying it, we were keeping it. The voice repeated, "Release." The glass bowed. Annetta screamed, punching in codes. And then, silence. Lights back on. Entity gone. Chamber empty. Morning came. They called it a technical malfunction and handed us NDAS. Annetta quit. I stayed. Last week, a package arrived. No return address. Inside, a fragment of metal identical to Subject 14. A note. You opened. Since then, I can't sleep. At night, I hear 2 beats per minute. Beneath the floor. If any of you work at remote Arctic facilities, be careful. Sometimes we're not studying anomalies, sometimes they're studying us. I'm sure someone was living in my apartment while I thought I was living alone. I hesitated for a long time before writing this. Every time I think back to those nights, my stomach knots up, and I still can't believe I survived. Maybe some people will say I was paranoid, but I swear to you, this really happened. I rent a 1-bedroom apartment in an old Soviet-era building. Nothing special, but it has one unsettling feature: endless dark hallways that always smell damp. The elevator creaks like it could snap at any moment. Still, the rent is cheap, so I stayed. The first red flag came 2 weeks after moving in. I came home from work, opened the door, and noticed something strange. The mug I'd left on the kitchen counter was now in a different spot. I was sure I hadn't touched it. I brushed it off. Maybe I was just tired. But the thought stuck with me. The following week, little details kept piling up. In the bathroom, I always screw the cap back onto the toothpaste. It's just a habit. One morning, it was off. A small thing, but these small things started happening more and more. I became obsessive about locking my door. I checked 3 times before leaving, but when I came back, there was always this lingering feeling, as if the air had been disturbed, as if someone else had been breathing in my space. Then one night, I woke up to a sound, a faint creak, like someone carefully stepping on the hallway floor. I lay frozen in the dark, my heart pounding so loud it felt like it would give me away. I finally turned on the light. Nothing. The apartment looked normal, but I couldn't sleep again. A few days later, I decided to test something. There's a built-in closet in the hallway. Deep, narrow, mostly filled with old boxes. I'd noticed the door was sometimes cracked open, though I never touched it. I set up a tiny old camera on the top shelf, facing the closet, just to see. If it was mice or something, at least I'd know. The next morning, I checked the footage. Hours of silence. Darkness, but around 3 a.m. something moved. At first, I couldn't make sense of it. A hand slid out from the shadows, then a head. I froze. Someone was crawling out of my closet. Slowly, carefully, they stood up and wandered through my apartment. They picked up my mug, they used my bathroom, and then they lay down on my bed, right next to me. They stayed there for several minutes, watching me sleep, before getting up and crawling back into the closet. I dropped my phone. I couldn't breathe. What do you even do? Call the police. Tell them someone lives in my closet. It sounded insane, but I had the footage. I called a friend, terrified to stay alone. We went through the closet together. Behind the boxes, we found a hatch, a small opening leading to a crawl space between the walls. Apparently, this psycho had been using it like a den. I moved out the very next day. I deleted the recording, not out of fear, but because watching it made me physically sick. But sometimes I wake up at night and wonder, what if he found someone new? What if, right now, someone is lying in your closet just waiting for you to fall asleep?